Hey, and welcome back to Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. I am Christy Palermo, and I'm here with Jennifer Hobson. And today we are talking about hormonal health. So we just want to start off, guys. We are not actual physicians. We are talking about hormonal health as what we've seen within our businesses and our own personal lives. And we're just going to start the conversation. So we're happy to have you join in with us. So we're going to jump right into it. And so I have a question for you, Jen. What is hormone health? Who needs it? And why do we need it? So three-part question for you.
So I love questions like this because it's not just one faceted, right? There's no one part of hormone health, especially when you're talking about anything in the body. There's always layers, right? So saying, what is hormone health and who needs it? But before I even dive into answering you, when I was kind of thinking about this, if I was to explain what a hormone is, maybe even to my kid, so he has an understanding, like what's a hormone and like what does it look like, I kind of think about it, and really a hormone, it's the body's chemical, it's a messenger, right? So it's like the little guy on the messenger bike that's taking your chemicals and traveling around the body, kind of going through the bloodstream to say, hey, you have to go here and you have to go here, or there's not enough of you, so you need to make more. Like it's the little messenger hopping around the body, kind of with with his little hat on, and he's on his bicycle. That's kind of what I was thinking of when I was thinking of the hormone. But it's traveling around that body, sending messages, and in hormones case, it's sending the signals, to tissue in our body, to organs in our body through the bloodstream. And really, hormones control so much. And I know we said that about gut health, and I still stand by that the gut controls so much. But if you think about it, and the gut is where everything lives, and that's the epicenter, the messenger always has to come back and forth to the epicenter, right? It might go out, but it's kind of come back. And if you really just stop, oh my God, hormones, they control so much. They control development in kids. And even when we're older, they control metabolism, they control reproduction, they control fertility, they control energy, they control mood. Like it goes on and on and on and on. It controls, if it's controlling your mood, it's controlling your depression, it's controlling your happiness. And we are called happy, healthy, skeptical for a reason. We want to experience happiness. So point blank, a really quick answer to what is hormone health. It's the thing that is in partner with your gut that tells your body what to do and where to do it. And then who needs it? It's in all of our body, men and women. It's point blank. We all have them, but we all need to support them. And we're going to kind of stay in one area as we're talking about hormone health. But what I will tell you is there is endless amounts of information on hormone health. And if you don't know where to start, you can always reach out to us. But I always go back to, if you don't know where to start with blood work. Even with your hormones, like it's easy peasy. Start with your blood work. And I know we're going to continue to answer some of the questions, but those are my quick answers to your questions, Christy.
Oh, I think you answered that beautifully. And I was laughing because I totally had the visual of your little messenger guy.
Right, he's got his little hat on. Yeah, exactly. And I can picture him like going through New York City and trying to avoid all the, the white blood cells, the red blood cells, the virus that tried to get into your body to tell your body what it's supposed to do that day.
Gonna give a throwback. Do you remember the magic school bus with Miss Frizzle?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah,
Jumping in the body and actually going all these different routes. But I think you covered that great. And I love that you mentioned too, just to reminder that a lot of times you hear hormone health and it's women talking about it, women referring to it, but obviously everybody has hormones. So it's not just for women. And it's, as you said, it's not just for adults. It affects kids. It affects, obviously we all have them. And it's a conversation that needs to be had because it really does affect every single part of our systems. And to, like you said, get started first with your blood work, because that's going to be telltale signs on where to begin for yourself. And and getting some information for personal information.
When did you, Christy, first start learning more about hormone health? When was it really like, hey, this should actually be something that's important to me?
I really dove into it more as I became a health coach. So for anybody listening, I actually jumped in with joining Jen in her business. And so we each have our own businesses and we're health coaches, and we got more into nutrition. And I had always been fascinated by it, but I didn't know much about hormone. And I still have a lot to learn. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, but I've learned a lot through nutrition. And as Jen had mentioned, talking about gut health and seeing the role it played and has now had effects on my own body, and seeing that when I start focusing on nutrition and gut health, and I haven't even gone really deep into it yet, but seeing the effects like on my sleep and on my mood, and knowing that these things are connected with hormones. But also I will say that the small moments of looking into hormone health too is actually when I went off birth control and trying to figure out how my body works in a way to, there's charting and stuff for women that you can do for your body to see, like when you're ovulating, when you're expecting your period, different things like that. So now I'm getting a little more into female health, but that was part of my journey, was looking into it then. And I'm going to have to look up the name of the book that I really liked for that, so we can add into the show notes, because that was a really good one and super fascinating. And I feel like there's not enough information as kids, like as we're getting older, about our bodies and hormones. And that one just popped in my head right now that I actually forgot about, was so good. And so that was like a little dive into it in my maybe mid-20s. And then now I look into it more with more nutrition and stuff that I can do to help other people regulate things. So
I think that's the biggest reason why I ask it. I was just genuinely curious, because when I think about that, and you're saying like mid to late 20s, right? And when I think back in my journey, I would say it was probably around the same, right? Later 30s. And what's crazy to me is that we were making decisions, especially as females, about our hormone health as young as 12 to 15 without knowing shit about it, right? We were just doing what, Western medicine and doctors had told us is the better option, without having any information about how it could affect us short term, long term, with so many different aspects of our health. And that's what sometimes I stop and go, to be honest, what the fuck? Like, was it me? Did I not do enough research, and do I own that? Or is it really our culture and our community that's just not doing due diligence and the service by our kids to say, hey, let's, because maybe it's a taboo conversation, even when you're talking about young kids, boys and girls, when they're developing, and think of how many new hormones are being developed in their body at such a fast rate. Maybe if we, stop treating it as such a taboo conversation and we looked at the science behind it, guess what? Kids want to understand. Young adults want to understand, because even as adults, we want to figure out, well, why do I do this? Or why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? Is there anything I can do to change that? So that was really the intent of my question, going, it's definitely a realization of going, wow, we didn't even start to think about that. And at that point, I had already had a baby. That's crazy, right? That you're not even starting to think about all of the things that control so much in your body, until you're going, oh, well, there's something wrong with me. So now I actually have to figure out, for me, it was a thyroid disease. Now I have to figure out how these things work because I'm sick. And that's just, it's mind blowing to me.
That is a really great point. And we're going through it, all of us, as teenagers, like it, not talking about it. And I'm skipping around here, but not talking about it in school enough, like that is definitely something that I think our culture needs to work on, because it's so important. And then not talking about it is not serving anybody, because like you said, we're going through it young and we want to know. Like, I feel like I wished I had known a lot more back then. And side note, I did remember the name of the book. It's The Garden of Fertility. So we'll put that in the show notes, but that was just a fascinating one for me. But yeah, like you said, to really dive into it is like, oh, well, now I'm sick. Now I have to like backpedal and learn about it more, or already having had a kid.
Right?
So interesting. Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing for me that I've had that aha moment. And again, we're not medical professionals, and everything that I share with you is my opinion based on my experience, and you have to experience things based on what's right for you. However, if I could go back to when I was 15 and I started taking birth control for the reasons of extreme pain from periods and acne, I will tell you right now, I would not have what I wish someone had put in front of me. And it's not that my parents did a disservice. They didn't know either, right? The doctor was saying, hey, this is gonna help. They just want to help their kids, right? You don't want your kids to be in pain. You don't want your kids to be uncomfortable. So you get the quick fix. And to be honest, there was plenty of things I could have at least tried before going down that route. And, for me, it's like, with pain, okay, maybe I could have tried magnesium. Maybe I could have changed my nutrition. Maybe there was things that were causing inflammation, because I guarantee you, because luckily, I might have, breakout every once in a while, but I usually know exactly where it came from. It's 99% is from something I put in my gut. And if I had had that information, I wouldn't have gone on birth control. And genuinely, I have found a correlation between birth control, and again, this is my experience, but there was personally a correlation between birth control and, because I am not a good person at taking things at the same time every single day, so it was all over the place. Who knows what I was doing to my hormone health, but there was a direct correlation between that and putting myself into a thyroid storm, because I was already susceptible with many, many immunity diseases in my family. So if I could go back, that's the one thing I go, you know what? No, hell no. I will try everything else before that's my first option. And I don't know if you feel the same or had a similar experience. And I don't have daughters, you do, but I have two boys, and there's going to be a lot of good things that come with that and a lot that don't. However, I will say, if I had a daughter, I would do the same thing.
I actually really agree with you. And first of all, I will say, I'm sure there's people listening to this that can relate to your story, because just now people are starting to talk more about not using birth control or using other methods. And there's different things. There's more knowledge around it, general knowledge for people, where I feel like it used to just be physicians, really.
Yeah.
That would, if you asked the questions, you would, be told certain things. And it's more talked about now. But I agree. I actually would not have gone on it, because it was kind of like, this is just what you do when you turn a certain age too, you just
oh, you might have sex, here's some birth control.
Okay, so I guess I'm going on it, because you don't know any different.
No, and they throw the birth control, but I couldn't tell you at that point what the 5 to 7 days were that you could actually get pregnant. I had no idea, right? None of that was shared. Just, hey, here's a pack of pills, take one every day for 30 days. Period, the end. Literally, figuratively, all of it.
And at the time was like basically for the rest of your life, or until you want to have kids.
Exactly. And that's crazy to me, because, especially as we've seen, the average age of women having children tends to be older, right? I didn't have my first child till I was 30. And then I just had the second child. I'm telling you how old 37, right? So if I had been on birth control from 15, right? That's over 20 years of artificial hormones going into my body. And that freaking blows my mind. I personally, after I was diagnosed with hyperthyroid and Graves' disease in 2003, I took myself off synthetic birth control, right? And I saw huge improvements in my health, and that was my personal choice. But if I had still been on it, and I have suffered with second pregnancy infertility, and I just can't imagine how much more difficult my health, that part of my health would have been. And if you're struggling with things like that, know that there are people out there that will support you and not just give you a band-aid. Because I do feel like when I was young, that was the band-aid. Instead of getting down to why is your menstrual cramp so bad? Why do you feel so horrible? Why do you have extreme, PMS? Or why do you have all this acne? Instead of digging to the core, and I think it's with a lot of things that we do in the health industry right now, and with how we feel, we just go, here's a band-aid, and we put that on like a huge gash in our arm.
It's bleeding. It's never gonna.
stitches, right? There's no stitches, just a tiny little troll's band-aid on my arm, hoping to keep my arm, together. So I genuinely want to encourage you to have these conversations and ask the questions. I think that's a big thing when I was younger. Your doctor knows all. So you were reserved and you didn't want to question and say, hey, well, I don't understand this, or why should I do this? Or is this going to solve my problem or create a different problem down the line?
Mhm.
Right?
Yes. And I think it's awesome that these days, and also with social media, being able to follow all kinds of doctors and naturopaths and functional medicine doctors, and it's just so much more open now, the conversation, that a lot of people are looking into alternatives instead of just jumping onto under the band-aid, as you're
Right?
saying. So like, for instance, two people that actually Jen and I both follow, is that you can find on Instagram, and we'll put these in the show notes too, is Dr. Tanda Cook, and she's a naturopath. So I love her approach to things because she's really about getting to the root of things before, and not just slapping that Band-Aid on. And then the other one is Dr. Mark Hyman, and he is a family physician, but he does functional medicine. So he does a lot around eating for your body and gut health, and same as Dr. Tanda. And so those are two that I mean, there's so many that I follow. I love seeing different tips on what to eat and how to sleep and how important sleep is, and all these things that can affect your hormones. So those are two that we really recommend to check out their pages on Instagram. And
I love
then,
Dr. Tanda does it in a fun way. So you will
yeah,
be amused by her videos, right?
yes, as she lives on her beautiful farm with all the animals.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Um,
Jen, so if somebody's just getting started with this, like all of this is so new, like I don't even know where to start. Like, what would you say are a couple of tips for somebody to
well,
get started?
that is the thing, and that's actually what I was going to say is as you were sharing a couple of the people we follow, what is great is there's so much information out there. However, it could be information overload, and you're like, I am so overwhelmed. I don't even know two things I could do right now to support my hormone health. And the ones I always start with, and they're my go-to. And again, I still think back to when I was young and some things I would have changed that we didn't know. The biggest hormone disruptor that is easy to remove from your life is artificial fragrance. And when I'm talking about artificial fragrance, I'm talking about candles. Not all candles are created equal. I am sorry to poo-poo on you, Yankee Candle, but we used to buy them. They were on sale. You'd be like, yeah, I got 5 Yankee Candles. They do not live in my house anymore. They do not serve us, especially with a tiny baby, but also because of the fragrance. So candles, air fresheners, all those plugins, they might make your house smell like a cookie, but sorry, it is not doing you any favors. I've even seen recently people still have, air fresheners in their car like, personally, they give me a freaking migraine. I can't be around them because
Same.
I've
Mhm.
eliminated them from my life, right? So your candles, your air freshener, your perfume, your dryer sheets, guys. I know they make your pillows soft and warm, but use some wool dryer balls. If you still need a scent, get some really pure essential oils. Put that on your wool dryer ball, and even your laundry detergent. Around here, unfortunately, we're not going to get the snuggle the scent on our laundry because I use a clear and non-fragrant laundry detergent. I don't know if there's any other things, quick things that you've done in your house, Christine.
Actually, you touched on most of them, and switching over to soy candles that have essential oils in them or something, because yeah, now I've noticed that once I've cut all those out too, once I learned what's in most candles and things, because I like them and I like to smell something, the ones that have the artificial scents really give me a headache, and it's too overwhelming now. And so I don't even use that. Same, I use the wool dryer balls instead of fabric sheets. I've switched over laundry detergent. I just switched over to a new brand that I found that is more natural, and I love that they're for the planet. So it's like these little sheets that you throw
I
right
saw
in
you
the,
post them. I was like, oh, that's super
yeah.
interesting. I should try that.
Yeah,
What
there's
is
one,
the brand
Earth
called?
Breeze. Earth Breeze is one of them. And the other one is I just tried a new one just because I wanted to try out a different. So again, my memory is just not with me
That's
today.
your baby brain. That's the baby brain, and all the hormones are going to the baby, so your brain isn't functioning. It's a real thing.
It really happens. Oh my gosh, my brain literally goes blank. So that's the new one that I just tried. I really like, and there is a little bit of a scent, but they use natural essential oils and things. And so I'm finding that my laundry is getting clean. That was the first thing, the biggest thing for me, and that it smells good. Like I want it to smell like
Yeah.
you can get totally fragrant free. I mean, it's not artificial fragrances anyway, but those are small shifts that we can make in our daily lives for all those artificial things that you don't think are affecting you. But actually, it was Dr. Tanda Cook that I heard her say this, that we're in toxic overload. Like it's like, drinking from a fire hydrant with toxins these days. And so things like that you can simply change in your house and fix in your house.
For
So I like
sure.
that you
Yeah.
touched on all those.
I mean, it's true. And I hear so many times like, I grew up with that and I'm just fine. Well, fine isn't good enough for me anymore, guys. And we don't actually know. We don't actually know if we're fine, right? I don't know what contributed to my thyroid health. However, I want to do everything I can to support good hormone health. So the biggest thing that you can do is, avoid the meat protein that is not grass fed and it is not grass finished. This is actually a term I just learned a couple of years ago. And the biggest thing is if our meat protein is in a high stress atmosphere before it is finished or butchered, then a lot of times it's releasing tons of cortisol, and now in turn we're ingesting it, and that is the stress hormones. Now it's disrupting your sleep, and if you don't have enough sleep, your hormones aren't working the way they're supposed to. And like I said, we're going to go deeper into cortisol and stress itself, but if we're consuming or producing it ourselves, we're going to increase our blood pressure, we're going to increase our heart rate, we're going to increase our muscle tension, and our gut health is going to really stop working the way it's supposed to. You're going to have issues with digestion. For a lot of people, that shows up as, unfortunately, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, all the things you don't want to feel on a regular. So when we ended up, what I just want to say is eat those nutrient dense food. Yes, absolutely. Treat yourself every once in a while. Absolutely. However, at least 80% of the time, focus on those nutrient dense foods they're supporting you rather than, like Christy said, adding to that toxic environment.
Absolutely, Jen. I think you made a lot of great points, and we would love to keep this conversation going. There's so much there, and we just touched on very small parts here today. But thank you guys all for joining us, and let's keep the conversation going and ask your questions, and let's keep serving each other with this, and where we can find more information for each other and things like that. But we will have some stuff in our notes from this show, and you can always follow us on Instagram at Happy Healthy Skeptical. And we love sharing this time with you. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
I love that we shared the environmental ones because those are the easy things, right? I mean, it's hard to go, oh, I'm going to take a total 180 and change every single thing that I do. That's hard to do every day. Like we have busy lives, we have other priorities, but those small things will definitely help. And if you flip the script from environmental to internal, just like when we talked about gut health in our other episode, the easy things to do that I'm going to talk about till the end of time is avoiding processed foods. As much as you can, avoid processed food, eat those nutrient dense foods. Those are the things that are going to support your health, because it's putting the minerals and vitamins in that you need so those hormones can again take them on their little messenger bike to where it is that they're supposed to go. And as I said, always start with your blood work, but I can almost guarantee all the time the three things that you're going to be deficient in, because I myself have, especially if you're a northerner like me and you're not getting that much sunlight. First, vitamin D. Vitamin D. The next one is going to be your magnesium, and then the next one is selenium. For most of us, we're also deficient in zinc, but I don't want to necessarily encourage you to get that because if you are someone dealing with thyroid, just hyper or hypothyroid, zinc can definitely get in the way of any medication that you're taking. But take a look at your blood work, see where you can support your health naturally, and at the very end, just eat some good shit, right? Get some vegetables, get some grass-fed meat, do the things. What do you feel about that, Chris?
Yeah, same. The more I learn about processed foods, the more I am horrified at what is allowed in the US. And so cutting it out, and I feel a difference when I cut those things out. My kids' behavior is different when I cut out processed foods because they're still kids and they're going to have treats and from other people and things like that. And sometimes I just give them something that I probably shouldn't. And I notice the difference. I mean, we all do, like, and but I feel a difference. I notice it in them. And so these toxins come in and they live in our gut, and it's just disrupting they're stressors on the system. That's the word I was looking for. They are stressors. And so then we're not able to absorb maybe when we are eating nutritious foods, we're not able to absorb it the way we're supposed to because there's so much toxic overload in our system. So really cutting down on it when it comes to eating trying not to eat processed food as much as possible. And Jen and I have recipes galore that we can share with you if you want to message us for things you can make for your family that are still delicious, healthy, hearty foods. That it doesn't mean that you're cutting out taste and being satisfied with food when you cut out processed. It's just a shift in things.
Right. And there's one more thing, and I want to actually have a separate episode on this, so definitely look forward to it in the future. But we've talked about stress a lot, and stress can creep its way into almost everything that we do. And one way that it shows up big time is in our primary stress hormone, and that's cortisol, right? Because we are built with fight or flight. However, sometimes our brain isn't determining that the stress you have because of a work project or a family illness or just life in general, it still thinks that's fight or flight. So you're actually going through about 30 fight or flight, situations that before you might have had two. So that cortisol is constant. You're dipping into it, you're dipping into it. And one way that I try to decrease my cortisol is because sometimes when we're eating our animal protein, they are full of cortisol because they were actually, you know, they were butchered